Is it possible to change things? Can I rise above the flood? Will the process cleanse my soul?
Hey guys, I want to welcome everybody back to the In the Blood podcast. My name is AC Bergen-Fischer. With me, as always, is Jason the Dice Man Moore.
Hey, everybody.
As you may have noticed, I shaved and I'm not feeling nearly as pretty as I have in weeks past. I don't know whether I should be thinking about reintroducing facial hair or just getting extensive surgery done.
It was a facade. You need the surgery.
Well, this is the part I don't like about doing video is, I mean, I know I've said this before, and it's not really a joke. I really do believe that the people who told me I had a face that was made for radio were probably being quite truthful with me.
It is what it is.
Anyways, now that I'm done making myself feel terrible, um, by the time this episode drops, actually, it's Tuesday, January 21st right now as we record, but it'll be Friday, January 24th when this comes out. So I'm speaking to you from the past, but in the present, as this comes out, it's my birthday. Kiss my ass.
Happy birthday!
And I don't mean that in a mean way. It's just like, please send me things.
Remember the old Frosty the Snowman cartoon? Happy birthday!
Anyways, what is my problem? I feel like ever since we made the shift to video, it's just my ability to be anything resembling professional is just gone.
Oh, your ego's very clearly in the background, so you're good.
Okay, so last week I thought we had a really interesting conversation about how loyalty or sorry, how expectations and loyalty play into our platonic relationships. And this week I thought maybe we could like continue on that same vibe-ish without repeating ourselves by exploring, how trust factors into our relationships beyond just the expectations and the loyalty.
Mhm. Well, and we got to be prepared because trust can go to a lot of different rabbit holes. So, as usual, this is coming in as one thing, but we're probably going to leave as something else.
Fair
It's like a
enough.
bowl of Cheerios.
I also realized that when I was titling last week's episode and writing the show notes, I focused so heavily on the loyalty, I completely ignored the expectations. So for anybody that felt that they were bamboozled when they listened to that episode, that's entirely on me.
I thought it swung.
All right, well, important thing is not that anybody knew what they were getting in for, but that they stuck around once they were in. So
Good.
hopefully it's the same thing this week. Maybe I should just,
Thank you very much for that, guys.
yeah. So, anyways, I could ramble on
So, what's your
indefinitely.
first
Maybe
point?
you should just get us started. So, I'll start off by asking you how do you personally define trust in relationships?
Well, it takes a long time. It's not something I accept in the very beginning, as I think that happens with a lot of, well, no, actually, because a lot of people just trust right off the bat. But to define it, the ability, see, I want to put trust in there, but I'm trying to describe trust, so I don't use trust as a descriptor. um, Trust would be the ability to speak to somebody or hear from somebody and know what they are saying is truth because it's compounded by their actions.
That's interesting because when I was thinking about like how I would define trust, it really wasn't about expectation for me so much as it was about belief. And for me, trust is my ability to believe that somebody isn't going to hurt me, that somebody isn't going to mislead me intentionally.
Mhm. It sounds similar.
Yeah, I think there's probably maybe we're just using different wordage. Is that a word?
It is now.
Fair enough. But yeah, I think it ties in a lot to I think the expectations that we explored last week. You know, if my expectations of a person are positive, I think that this belief that they're not gonna be shitty with me is a lot easier to maintain.
Fair enough.
And whereas, you know, you had mentioned that it takes a lot of time. I would agree with you in a sense. In another sense, I think there's a default amount of trust that I bring to the table with somebody new because if I haven't had any bad experiences with them, there's nothing that would lead me with that individual to expect a bad experience.
Mhm.
Now, if 2 days in you act like an asshole, my default from that day forward is to brand you as an asshole until you dig yourself out of the hole.
Right. Well, and that I think that also coincides with your belief that people are mostly good and my belief that people are mostly bad. Because where you bring a level of trust right off the bat, expecting them that they won't hurt you or bamboozle you. I bring friendliness to the table, acceptance, but I don't give you trust right away because you haven't earned it. Trust is in my books is earned, and
That's
I don't
interesting.
expect somebody to trust me. If I meet somebody and we're okay, you know what? Here, I'm going to do my pin card. Hide your eyes for me. You know, okay, fine. I don't find that a slight because I haven't been there long enough to earn their trust.
Actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, I'm just like I'm remember it was a long ass time ago, but I'm looking back on like when we didn't know each other very well many, many years ago.
Mhm.
And there was I can't remember what the context was, but there was some occasion where you had you were trying to be transparent with me. And I said, "Hey, no worries. I trust you." And you said, "Don't."
Mhm.
You said, "You don't know who you're dealing with."
Sure.
And in the moment, I don't think I really had the sense that you were saying that I'm not trustworthy. What you were saying more along the lines was, no, 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 no. I don't want you to put me under the pressure by default trusting me. I need the opportunity to demonstrate that I'm trustworthy.
Yep. 100%. And for me, I think with giving no trust in the beginning, if something messes up, I think for me it's easier to forgive because there was nothing there to disappoint. Once there's a level of trust there and something happens, then I find it harder to forgive because we built up to this point. This was the expectation in both of us because we've talked about it, and this backslid. Now, how do I get my head around that to forgive you?
That's actually an interesting point. So, I mean, anybody who's been following me on social media or listening to my other podcasts lately knows that I've been recently going through something just like that, where expectations were disappointment and where forgiveness had to be employed. And it was a big emotional blow because I do think that I trusted too much
Mhm.
without the other person having earned it. And because I had offered that default trust, I think maybe I was more at risk of looking past certain warning signs because I wanted to believe that this person was a good person.
Mhm. And that's part of why back in the day I said don't because I never want to be clumped in with all those people that oh don't worry you can trust me and then they fuck you over. I never wanted to be that.
Yeah, because it actually makes sense when you frame it that way because now I'm realizing that it's just a case of like I think on some level you knew that you were going to disappoint me at some level, that forgiveness was going to have to come into play, but You wanted to be able to come back from whatever happened. You didn't want to just be discarded because you looked like every other person who hurt me or
Mhm.
disappointed me.
And life happens. Even if it's unintentional, life happens.
Well, and that's just the thing. I mean, like even when I sit here now, like having just moments ago defined what trust means to me in a relationship, effectively saying that like I trust is my belief that somebody isn't gonna like intentionally F me over. Sometimes the unintentional stuff hurts just as bad,
Mhm.
which again probably ties into the expectations we talked about last week. Are those expectations realistic? And so far as the trust is concerned, I don't want to regurgitate last week's topic, but I'm really realizing that I need to revisit that in my own head to see like how maybe being unrealistic in what I look for in people will affect how much trust they get and how much disappointment will come from that trust
Mhm.
and how that will in turn affect my ability or my need to forgive them. Like
Right.
this really is like God, when you said there was a lot of rabbit trails to chase down, I didn't realize how complex this would get right off the bat.
Mhm. Well, it's something I learned in psychology at the U of T in Toronto when I was taking my courses there. First off, when you say no, it creates no expectations. Okay, stop. Don't trust me. The other thing is there will be certain things that you may expect that I don't live up to. Like some people believe that, okay, I work from 9 to 5. So if I show up at 9 o'clock, I'm late. If I show up at 22:09, I'm on time. That's some people's philosophy. My philosophy is if I start at 9 o'clock, you're paying me at 9 o'clock, I'm there 10 to 5 to 9 because I get paid from 9 o'clock. My time is valuable. You want me there at 8:30, you pay me at 8:30. But on the same thing, once I'm there, I'm devout. You have 100% of my loyalty. You will never have to worry about being ripped off. But I have to prove this stuff where other people can be on time and do their job properly. They may not really give a crap. And, if something needs to be done and it's 6 o'clock, oh, well, it gets done tomorrow. Whereas I'll be there until 7, 8 o'clock if I have to, if I end at 6, to get what I said I was going to get done. Because I didn't do it in the time that was allotted. So that's on me to be there a little bit later to get it done. So by saying no, it also puts you on guard and allows you to learn where you can trust me and where you can't. Because I know I'm not 100% in everything.
Fair enough. Okay, so one of the concepts that's come up a few times in the last couple of minutes now is forgiveness or forgiving.
Right. So then I guess the question is, can forgiveness be like a rational choice? Or, does it actually require an emotional shift? Does something have to change in order for forgiveness to happen?
I'm tempted to say yes.
Playing both sides of the coin.
No, it just because a recent experience for me has made me realize that, sometimes people are just ugly
Mm-hmm.
and they do and say ugly things, unforgivable things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the way forgiveness gets framed in our society is that like if I say I forgive you, I've effectively absolved you from any wrongdoing, and you're free to go on being shitty to me in the future because you said you were sorry, I said I forgive you, and we basically hit the reset switch. But the way I personally approach forgiveness is I'm saying, look, I am not absolving you of any wrongdoing.
Mm-hmm.
I can't undo what you've done. It's there. It's in my memory. I'm affected emotionally by it. The trust has been diminished. My expectations have been redefined. These are all things I can't change anymore. It would be like trying to put the smoke back in the cigarette. It's idiotic. I can't do it.
Right.
But when I say I forgive you, what I say is I'm What I'm saying is that I'm letting go of the emotions surrounding this so much as I'm capable because I don't like the way I'm feeling when I try hanging on to the injustice of it all. I can't handle the way I'm mentally affected when I'm looking for vengeance, when I'm looking for vindication, when I'm looking for you to genuinely hate yourself for what you've done.
Mhm.
Because every bit of unforgiveness for me that I hang on to, it ties directly back into me trying to control you or try to control the situation or trying to erase the past in some level. I can't hang on to all this stuff. Like when I say I forgive you, that's the first step towards me just taking a deep breath and deciding what my way forward is, with or without you.
Mhm.
So I think like when I said yes to answering that question, it's like because I think that on some level it is a rational choice for me. I've logicked my way through the fact that if I don't do this, then I'm not going to feel good.
Right.
But at the same time, it does require an emotional shift because, or maybe the emotional shift is a symptom of the forgiveness. I don't know.
Mhm.
But definitely reason and emotion are both involved for me.
Right.
Like, how do you feel about it? Do you think forgiveness is a rational choice, or does it require that emotional shift?
For me, now I think this is to the individual. I think both are applicable, but it's on the individual how they deal with it. For me, there has to be a paradigm shift because if I lose respect for somebody or a situation happens where forgiveness would be an option, I have to have demonstrated to me that a change has happened. It's like I taught my kids. I taught my kids, well, you don't say sorry unless you learn, live, and change, which means if you say sorry, you are saying, I know I did something wrong. I realize what it was, and I am doing something to actively change it because it was a wrong action.
Hmm.
So for me, I don't let go of it. I don't forgive like you can. I think what you do is a blessing to the people that have wronged you. For me, I don't necessarily carry it though. I realize, okay, this person's in that. I'm not going to forgive them. And then it washes away. And I don't harp on it. I don't, I'm not going to say endure. I don't over chase it. I don't overthink it. I let it go. And when I interact with that person again, it comes back into my foremind. Okay, like we have an issue still. You haven't done anything to earn my forgiveness. So I'm dealing with you on this totally different level because you put a paradigm shift in our relationship. Therefore, it's going to take a paradigm shift to put it back. A lot of people don't realize, and there's a lot of people out there that don't even know that that paradigm shift has happened. Because if I see them at Tim Hortons, I can have a conversation with them and I can say, hey, how's it going? Good to see you. How's the dog? Good. How's your wife? Whatever the situation is, and be friendly and courteous. But that change in the relationship is there until it has been resolved. And there are some relationships out there that have never been resolved, and that's okay. I don't stress on it. I don't make it a part of my everyday. And woe is me. Okay, that's where that is. When I see that person again, I deal with it. For other than that, it sits compartmentalized in my brain and sits there until the next evocation of emotions.
So it sounds like we're both figuring out how to move on. It's just the forgiveness isn't the necessary piece of that for you.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And for me, forgiveness is earned. It's not given.
Okay. It sounds to me that, I mean, whereas, like, from my perspective, absolution of wrongdoing isn't a requisite component of forgiveness for me. It sounds like to some degree it does play in for you that
100%.
okay.
Yeah, you are correct.
Okay, moving on then. How do this is going to sound like a kind of an abrupt shift, but how do assumptions about a person's behavior impact the way you approach or maintain your relationships?
Well, first off, I try not to assume. And then for the old adage, it makes more of an ass out of me than it does you. I don't believe in this. It makes an ass out of you and me. No, it makes more of an ass out of me than it does you.
Fair enough.
um, because if I assume one thing and I end up being wrong, 9 times out of 10, you end up with egg on your face. So why go into a relationship, whether it's casual, one time, or lifetime like ours is? Why go into a relationship assuming anything? If you assume something, then you're going to cut you off from something else that may be absolutely amazing and fits you perfectly because you don't always know what you want. And an assumption is hoping for something you want. When I meet somebody, I have no expectations. Oh, I hope this guy has a lot of money. Oh, I hope this person has a nice car. Oh, I hope this person will buy me a coffee. I go in with, I hope this person has a good sense of humor. I go in with none of that. I go in with, hi.
It's got to make things a little bit easier in a sense because I mean, whereas I think most people do come in with some degree of assumption that just immediately opens the door for all kinds of not just disappointment, but I think also turning a blind eye to certain things that might present themselves because you've already got this narrative. Well, not you, but I mean, people will already have some kind of narrative in their head.
Right.
Whereas you're coming in, like you say, like blank slate, and you're just waiting for people to fill in all of the gaps which you have justifiably and reasonably left.
Mhm.
Because
Because
otherwise, it's like if I'm being honest, like for me, I try to be open-minded, and I say I try to be open-minded, not I am open-minded, because I do fill in some of these gaps
right.
right off the get-go. Like if I know we've talked about this on the show before, but when somebody's really just purely nasty to me, there's a couple of things I very rarely will ask. One is like, why are you doing this to me? And the other one is like, what the hell is your problem? I also would never assume somebody's just being a jerk. I typically will assume that there's a story behind the actions, there's a story behind the words. And maybe it's because I personalize things too much, but I just always assume that if somebody is kind of like guilty of ugly stuff, it's probably coming from a place of being traumatized on some level.
Right.
And, when I think about how that assumption, just that one assumption, would affect the way I approach or maintain a relationship, I think it sets me up to be abused on many levels because I'm so determined to see past the ugliness, to walk alongside them in their hurt and to help them to heal, that I ignore this parade of red flags that's going through the relationship.
Mhm.
And by the time I decide this has gone too far, it there's a lot of damage done, and I can't entirely again put that on the other person because I was the idiot who chose to ignore things. I enabled them.
Yep. Now there's two stories I'm going to give. I used to be friends with somebody who was a compulsive liar, and they were a good friend to me. They lied about owning cars. They lied to people about their stature in life. They got more money than they said they do, um, or they said they had more money than they really do. a whirlwind of making up stories to make themselves look more important. And by not having those assumptions when I went in, like I learned very early on that this person was full of crap. So I took them aside and I said, listen, this is where I'm coming from. I don't expect you to change. I don't expect you to not be full of crap. But here's what I do expect. When I take you aside and I ask you for verification, you be dead honest with me. You tell me, no, that was crap. I'm not going to tell other people. I don't need to ruin your reputation. Your lies are going to do that for yourself. But you're a good guy. You got a good heart. You're not a bad person. You're just a liar. When I come to you, you tell me. And for years, it worked really well until he ripped off my kids.
Hmm.
And about 10, 15 years in, yeah, it got really bad and he ripped off my kids. But again, having that non perception going in, that openness for somebody to be real, to be exactly who they are without any constraints. I also learn a lot. There's one lady that we were talking to, and she was a dog breeder. Then we found out she was also a conservation officer. Then we found out she was also a judge. Then we found out she was this and that and this, and it ended up being like 7 different things in one conversation. And when me and the person I was with left, they said, that person's sure full of crap. And I said, about what? Well, they're this and they're that and they're this and they're that. I said, how do you know they're full of crap? They're 60 years old. I've done a lot of crap in my 54 years. Most people wouldn't know that I got to my 4th year in psychology because I don't parade papers around and show, oh, look, I got my 4th year, but I didn't graduate. I didn't, people wouldn't know that I'm a minister. I'm a lot of different things. I'm a 4th year apprentice plumber. I've got lots of things under my belt. I don't talk about them all the time. So for me to assume somebody else can't do all that, but what happened is in that, this person frequents the same coffee shop that I do. And I am forever hearing stories from their mouths being right at the table beside us, contradicting what they told me. I didn't have to say anything to them. I already know where I put them. And I didn't have to hurt their feelings. I didn't have to make them, I really could. Maybe one day I should, but I don't have to because I already know. So I already know where that limitation is because I went in with an open mind. They proved themselves what they really are. So now when I see them, I can greet them and I know how close into me I want them. Doesn't hurt me, doesn't hurt them. They never leave with a bad taste in their mouths. And if they try to pull any of the crap on me, I got ammunition to put them down.
Not fair enough.
Win, win, win. So my question, I guess, then, with all that we just said, when does the line between helping someone cross a line, I don't even know how to put this. So with putting those barriers up in the beginning, I need to understand, when does helping someone cross the line into enabling harmful behavior? When does that? I don't know if I use the proper wording.
No, it makes sense to me because I mean, based again on that experience I recently shared, is like it's not like I was actively helping someone, but I was trying to situate myself in a position where I could help them. And so when they would use unkind words, when they would put me into unfair situations, and I was making this assumption that, okay, this is a trauma response, this person isn't being a dink, I was actually enabling harmful behavior. And so, like, even if it was a trauma response, what I should have done, if I really wanted to help, was to say, that's not acceptable. You can't be like this. Because I mean, I don't excuse my own behavior based on trauma response. If I act like a complete asshole, I know where it's coming from. I still need to own it because, I mean, my story isn't necessarily your problem.
Right.
Like if I come punch you in the face and you say, "Well, what's going on?" It's like, "Well, I'm having a bad day." Why should you care about what kind of day I'm having, except for the part where that resulted in my fist in your teeth?
Mhm. Right.
And I don't know. I think when you try helping someone, if you don't, as soon as you stop holding them accountable, you immediately cross into it's not even a gray area. It's a black and white line, in my opinion, from you're either holding them accountable or you are enabling harmful behavior.
Yeah.
I don't personally see a hybrid of the two. If you act like a jerk, I'm going to tell you, look, you're being a jerk. If you need
Right.
to talk about what's going on, that's cool. But as long as you're talking, we can have a conversation. If you're going to keep on yelling at me, I'm done.
Mhm. Right. So, okay, then just to dig a little bit deeper, like I understand my point of view on forgiveness, and I do understand yours, but it kind of seems like there's a lot more room for enabling in just flat out, I'm going to forgive you. Like you said, it's not excusing the behavior, but if you just forgive somebody and you leave, that doesn't really put the other person on notice.
Well, the way I personally handle it, I think it does because
Okay.
I will explain to somebody as I'm on my way out what forgiveness means to me.
Okay.
I'll tell them straight out, what you did was not okay. It will never be okay. Anytime I remember this, I'm not going to feel okay about it. I'm probably always going to think you're an asshole for doing or saying this. That being said, I'm not willing to keep on focusing on the feelings I have about this. When I say I forgive you, what that means is I'm giving myself the gift of peace of mind. I'm giving myself the gift of separating myself from your nonsense. And I'm giving myself the gift of not thinking about you anymore.
Fair
But
enough.
don't think for a moment that I'm absolving you of what you've done. You should be punished, but it's not going to be by me.
Right. That's fair.
Which I don't know. I've had people tell me in the past that they would rather that I had not forgiven them because my forgiveness hurt them more than my holding a grudge might have.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, okay, then with that explanation there, was there ever a specific moment when you realized when you're in the depth of a relationship that, you know what, this is just worth letting go?
Yes, and that specific moment for me, I mean, if I'm going to draw from my most recent experience, as a lot of people know, I spent most of last year volunteering at a Unitarian Universalist church. Now, the minister there is a person with whom I've had a fairly big recent conflict. In fact, this is the relationship that's been on the forefront of my mind through all of the conversation we're having today. I did enable harmful behavior in her because I knew, I mean, I didn't know what the trauma was in her past. I knew there must have been something. I'm pretty good at identifying that sort of thing. But I enabled abusive words, I enabled abusive behaviors in turning a blind eye, in not asserting and maintaining healthy boundaries. And when it finally got to the point where it's like, you know what, this person not only is she not going to change, is she not going to deal with whatever it is that motivates her to act this way? Now that I'm sufficiently hurt that I've got to throw up some boundaries, she's doubling down on the behavior in an attempt to obliterate my boundaries and to take it a step further by basically crap talking me, assassinating my character behind the scenes, trying to tear me down, trying to disrupt my social support systems by just basically trying to obliterate everything about me. That was the thank you I got for being stupid enough to turn a blind eye to ugly behaviors. So when I realized all of this, it just like maybe it took me a lot longer than it should have. But when I got to that point and I realized, okay, this isn't the case of I need to alter my approach. I'm just dealing with a shitty person. At that point where like there was no clear cut, obvious expectation, reasonable expectation, no intention expressed on their point to change, just a case of every angle I come at this from just shows a different view of the fact that this is what I can expect moving forward. If I continue to hang on at this point, not only would I have been stupid of past choices and behaviors, I'd be stupid in the present and in the future as well.
Right.
Like there does come a point where, you know, like you literally just have to wash your hands of somebody. You need to be done.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying that people should wait as long as I did, but you asked me about my experience, and that's how I'm going to explain it.
That's fair. Well, do you think that there are safeguards we can put up so we don't enable?
Yes, I think the first thing is one thing I've learned moving forward, and you know, because you've been my support system behind the scenes, you know that whereas like I've always believed that there's an inherent good in humanity. And no matter how many times I have a bad experience with an individual, I still believe that people in general want to do the right thing. And you know that a week or so ago was for the first time in my life, I was calling all of that into question and wondering, like, are people just shit?
Mhm.
And I realized that, you know what, I can't, I don't want to let bad experiences redefine who I am. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm delusional in thinking that people are good. But that's part of who I am, and it's a part that I like. Now, in order to protect that part, to answer your question, I I think that I've learned that throwing up boundaries before the hurt happens, before the disappointment happens, that's something I've got to work into the routine. Instead of saying, well, you seem to be coming from a hurt place, so I'm just going to leave you room to lash out like a wounded animal. Right from the get-go, I have to say, you know what? I understand that you're coming from a certain place, but you need to understand that I'm also coming from a certain place. And when you approach me on this level, I can't handle it. So whereas I'm not going to tell you to change, I'm not going to tell you to shut up. I'm going to tell you that you're entitled to your voice, but you're not entitled to me as an audience.
That's fair.
Like, would you handle things differently?
Um, I would probably be a lot more blunt. I would, for my protection, when it happens, I call them on it. One time could be an incident of habit or an incident of occasion. You know, this happened because a circumstance built up and blah. So one time I probably wouldn't, but if it happens a second time, it starts to show a bit of a pattern. I will definitely call them on it. Okay, this is where we are. You repeatedly do this. I need to let you know that I'm not comfortable with it. If it's coming from a place of trauma, get some help. I will help you get there. If it's coming from a place of being shitty, be honest about it, own it, and change it. Because all you're going to do is hurt yourself. And until that happens, we can only have limited interactions because I'm a very violent person and it's a trigger to me.
So you're effectively telling them don't poke the bear.
Effectively, but I'm also giving them the opportunity to get support and help for what they're doing.
Fair enough. Okay, so grazing past this, you're not like ignoring it, but I think like I, I'm left wondering, okay, so trust can be broken, expectations can be disappointed, relationships can be strained, boundaries, I mean, they can be either ignored, they can be maybe thrown up too late or ineffectively.
Mhm.
Now, if you get to the point where trust has been violated or broken, first of all, do you think that trust can be repaired? And second of all, like, what role does vulnerability play in rebuilding that trust if it can be rebuilt?
I think that is incidental. I believe any trust could be rebuilt, but I think a better question for that is, are most people willing to do something to rebuild, to actually rebuild the trust? I would find it's probably too much work these days for people, and they'll just move on and find somebody else. That's my personal opinion. I don't think a lot of people would work at rebuilding a trust. Or, like I have done in the past, I'll cut that part out. Like there are some people that I can't trust that I do still deal with and I talk to on a social in a social atmosphere, but I can't trust them. So I don't put myself in a position where trust is a factor. We can sit down, have coffee, and have a good conversation. I don't need to trust you to do that. So there are relationships that I have that have no trust in them because there's no necessity for it.
Fair.
But there's also relationships that I have where trust is an absolute necessity. And unfortunately, I've lost a couple of those because that can't be rebuilt because the other person's not really willing to do the work or they don't agree with what I have said is the issue, even if it's my own issue. And I inform them of it. Well, then you're just going to have to get past that. I'm trying to do that. So what can we do? And a lot of times it falls on deaf ears. So can trust be rebuilt? Yes. I 100% believe trust can be rebuilt. I don't think it always is because I think people don't always want to work at it. And sometimes it's just too much work for a short lived relationship.
Okay, so let me personalize this here. Let's talk about a long relationship. Let's talk about our relationship. We've had our problems in the past.
Yep.
Trust has been broken, at least from my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Like your perspective, how did you approach rebuilding trust with me when I broke your trust, when I disappointed your expectations?
We spent hours on the phone talking and working out. We spent time going for coffee, rebuilding. There's a number of different things that have happened on both sides, both ways. And, through conversation, through willingness to change, through acceptance. And when I say through acceptance, I mean accepting you're in the wrong or me accepting that I'm in the wrong. A lot of people are so stuck on blame that they can never be wrong because they just won't see it. And for a lot of time, for a long time, honestly, in my opinion only, and again, this is just my opinion, in the beginning of the relationship, I felt you were stuck there a lot. But through the miraculous of open mindedness and willingness to change, things have changed and built and become different. And we are totally different people, and we handle situations totally different than we did back in the day. And there was things that were brought up that trust was absolutely shattered, but we were young in our relationship. And though we became friendly again, sometimes it took years to rebuild that relationship. That or not that relationship, that trust part, because to any relationship, there's like 1,500 different kinds of trust.
Sure.
So there are some that have been broken, and there's some that have not. And in doing so, we learn what we can and cannot expect from each other, and our relationship works that way. Any good relationship will.
Now, when I
And
think about like what was going on my end of things, like especially if I look back on our most recent big blow up, which I don't even know how long ago that was now, but in the grand scheme of our 22 plus years, it was recent enough.
a couple of years ago.
But I think about, okay, so we had a rift that left us no communication for the better part of a year.
Mhm.
When it was time to revisit relations with you, I had no idea what to expect because I mean, it was obvious I had gone through a lot of changes on my end. It stood to reason that you had gone through changes on your end as well. Not that we were redefining who we are, but we were certainly thinking about how we approach things. We were learning how to exist without each other on some
Mhm.
level,
Right,
which in itself, I think these were like pretty substantial changes for two people who were so like this
right.
for so long to learn how to do this. That was a pretty big thing. But when I approached that first round of conversations, I mean, I was asking myself, well, like, how vulnerable should I be? Like, am I being stupid here? These are all questions I'm asking myself. And I mean, I finally had to come to the point where I realized, you know what? This might be stupid.
Yep.
This might be too much vulnerability. But at the same time, it's a gamble I have to take. I can't explain why I have to take it. I can't justify it logically, but this is what I need to do,
Mhm.
even though it's likely to incinerate everything about me.
Okay, fair enough.
But as much as that first few conversations, I mean, like, it was awkward as all fuck.
Yeah.
Talking to somebody who I knew so well who had become a complete stranger, us having to get to know each other, but then also realizing that, the it wasn't so much like, and again, like I'm only can speak from my own perspective. Yours might be and probably is different.
Mhm.
But when I realized like how much of you breaking my trust wasn't you breaking my trust so much as it was just me approaching you with completely unrealistic expectations, with me not just expecting or hoping for, but actually demanding from you things that you didn't have available to you to offer. That wasn't a shortcoming on your part. You didn't disappoint me. I disappointed me by farming the wrong acres in a sense.
Right. Well, but in the moment, it looked like I did.
Sure.
Right.
Also, I mean, I had to own up to the fact that this is something I think to some degree both of us had expressed to each other. It's like if I approach you in the wrong way and I bring out the something I don't want in you, to some degree, yes, you are approaching me on your own terms, but in another sense, I think it would be unfair to pretend that you're not reacting to the way I'm coming at you,
Mhm. No, and I'm also trying to give you what you want.
right? But if I'm
Right?
not
Even if
clear
my
about that, if
perception
I'm
is wrong.
like if I'm implying I want something and you give it to me, I'm like, fuck you, how dare you give me that thing? And you're like, what just happened here? I was turning myself inside out to give this dude everything he needs, and it turns out that like what? Like now I'm the jerk?
Mhm. Well, and I think that was a double positive in my opinion. One thing is we were kind of still in 15 years ago mode,
Mm-hmm.
and an eruption was evident. Even the most dormant of volcanoes blow up once every 10,000 years. Well, I don't know if that's true, but it's a good analogy.
At some interval.
Or they have in the past.
Sure.
Um, but we were so, I think, involved in being 15 years ago that we were working on the premise of 15 years ago, not today, in some of the ways we interacted. I also think we needed to learn to live alone so we could live together. Because we were so hand in hand, and we still are, but it's a more mature way now. Back then, it was very infantile. We were both dickheads and hot tempered and holding shit from the past. In order for us to move forward, we had to move apart. We had to learn to be just like I did when I had that 8-year hiatus from relationships. I did that because I needed to clear up all my luggage so I wasn't bringing baggage into every fucking relationship. Oh, into every friggin' relationship. Sorry. Though this was always the same relationship, we were bringing baggage from 15 years ago. So, us having that 6 to 9 month break that we had gave us the opportunity to work on self. And I believe it's true for you, but I went through a lot of time thinking, if we were to talk again, what would I do? Those kind of moments. How would I act? And I what I did was I said in my head, I'm going to go in not expecting anything, and that's where I learned to let go of expectations in our um, broad distance.
Yeah.
If I go in expecting anything out of you, I'm still expecting what I knew a year ago to 15 years ago. I'm not expecting the man today that is the different person today. If I go in with expectations, I'm going in because I know you. I know what you do. I know where I can trust you, where I can't. Well, we've been not talking for 6 to 9 months. How do I know any of that is true? And what kind of justification am I giving you to apologize for the wrongdoings you did? Now, I'm not saying I was without fault. I'm just going from my perspective because
Sure.
I also had to be in a position to right the wrongs that I did too. Okay, so I just want to put that on the table. I'm not, it wasn't one side like I think you did everything wrong.
No, I'm not feeling like you're pointing the finger at all.
Okay, but on my side, I had to go in with the mindset of if I'm expecting something from him, I'm setting him up to fail because he's a different person today than he was 9 months ago. Would that be fair for me to go in and say, okay, I'm talking to the same freaking guy that I knew 9 months ago? No, there are some things about you that's never going to change, and I know that. And those are parts that we love about each other anyway, so they don't need to. Those are parts that make our relationship work, and we don't need to. But in order for me to have my hand in rectifying our situation, I can't hold you accountable. I have to accept you for who you are today and let you be accountable for you, and I will be accountable for me. I can't come on the phone and think, oh, you got to own this, and this because you treated me blah, blah, blah. No. I go in saying, okay, I have to change this because I did by myself this, and that. So when I started talking to you, I didn't expect an apology. I didn't expect anything. I went in thinking, okay, we're starting anew. Let's see how this goes.
No, and I think it's been actually productive, like the way we approach conflict and misunderstanding since that time.
Mhm.
Because I agree with your observation about us having to like shake off the expectations from 15 years ago because we were very much living, first of all, too entrenched in each other, and also one foot in the past, one foot in the present.
Mhm. Nothing in the future.
Right. But that foot in the past, it tainted things, right? And we were talking about last episode about how even though we know each other really, really well, we've got a decent sense of what to expect from each other. we still don't know everything about each other. Or if I ask you a question, I might have a good sense of how you're going to answer it. I might be correct. I might not. That's what makes knowing you interesting. There's
Mhm.
always room to learn more.
But you know the answer is going to be honest.
Yes. But I think a big problem of what we were doing before is, we were too stuck on knowing what the other person was all about to really like relate on a healthy level. So I don't know. Long story short, I think we navigated the reconciliation reasonably well. I think that anybody who's listening to your perspective and mine, hopefully that empowers them on some level to think about how they're navigating their own personal conflicts.
And it definitely shows how vulnerability plays in building or maintaining a relationship 100%.
Right.
Because if you're not vulnerable and you're not willing to own your crap, then you're not going to have a healthy relationship.
Okay, so now we've, I think, done a really good job of internalizing conflict. Let's externalize it a little bit.
Okay.
Now, if there's a conflict between other people, do you believe that um, staying neutral is a valid option when other people are in conflict? Or do you think that you trying to stay neutral actually empowers one side or the other of the conflict?
For me, 100% believe in staying neutral. I will never take sides unless I'm directly involved in the conflict. I had two female friends and a rift happened between them. And one person came to me and said, blah, blah, blah. And I said, not my business. If you pull me into this, you're making the transition that you and I cannot be in a good relationship because this is none of my business. And then 4 days later, I had the other person come in and blah, blah, blah. And I said the exact same thing. You two have a conflict. I'm friends with you and I'm friends with her. This doesn't involve me. If I see the two of you and we go out, the three of us go out for coffee, this conflict doesn't happen at the table. The three of us are going to have a conversation about movies, the weather, and cars, or your favorite dress, or whatever. This conflict doesn't come up at our table because I'm not involved. And I do that on a very regular basis because I don't want to, I'm not one to bias either side. And I do think that supporting a friend, now, that being said, this was a dispute that I couldn't get behind either side at all. If somebody is blatantly wrong, I will say so. I will not get involved in the conflict. If I'm asked, I won't voice my opinion unless I'm asked. But if I'm asked, hey, this happened, that happened, this happened, what do you think? Okay, this is my opinion. And I do this every time we talk. This is my opinion. I'm giving you my opinion. It is yours to do with what you want. Throw it away, keep it, use 18 pieces out of the 100 pieces I give you, whatever. But once I give it to you, it's yours. Don't come back on me. Here's my opinion. And I will leave the situation. If the other person comes and says, well, you said that you agreed with this and that, and this and that, oh, I don't care. You're right, I did, because I do agree with that. But I also said I didn't agree with blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And that was your side. Because I will not give an opinion into a conflict unless I have a viewpoint on both sides, positive and negative, because it's neutral for me. I'm going to point out the good and bad aspects of your argument, and I'm going to point out the good and bad of your argument. You wanted my opinion. That's it. I'm walking out of this unscathed. I got nothing against either of you guys. Next time we see each other, we're going to have coffee and talk about cars.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more torn on it than you are because I think on one hand, I mean, if say like I'm hanging out with a buddy and his wife, and they are obviously in conflict, and it's like let's say for the example of this conflict, he's pissed off at her because he took her out for a romantic dinner and he was expecting to get laid and she didn't put out. Okay. This is a real world example. This thing happens with a lot of people a lot of the time. So, I mean, like, he's upset because he was expecting a certain kind of something. She's upset because he's not sensitive to the fact that she wasn't in the mood. I can see how he would be disappointed. I can see how that disappointment might actually be upsetting, especially like if he had an expectation wrapped up in things. Well, hey, like she's had a rough week. If I treat her nice, maybe that's going to put her more in the mood. I can also see her end of it where it's like, you know what, like bodily autonomy is a thing. You're not obligated to spread your legs because somebody took you for supper.
You're not obligated to spread your legs because of anything.
Right. So I mean, if they're nipping at each other, it's like, you know what? Tony out. Like if they ask me what I think, well, what I think is I can see both sides of it. What I think is I can understand where both of y'all are coming from. But most of all, what I think is you shouldn't be talking about each other to me. You should be talking to each other without me.
Mhm. Yep.
Now, there's the other kind of conflict where, say, like I show up and I'm supposed to be hanging out with the same two people, and they're standing in the driveway and they're having words with each other. Now I can see they're both upset, they're both angry, I've heard them both say super, super ugly things to each other. Nobody's threatened each other, but just like looking at the situation, I see that there's two angry people and he's holding her purse and she's saying, "Give me my purse back." I'm not being neutral in this situation. Even if he's holding her purse for what he believes are good reasons, maybe there are good reasons I'm not aware of. I'm still not going to be neutral because the situation looks wrong to me. I'm going to tell him, you know what? Give her her purse and take a fucking walk and calm down. Now, that's not to say I'm necessarily painting him as an abuser or necessarily saying this guy's definitely in the wrong. All I'm saying is, like, first of all, it's her purse. She's entitled to it. Second of all, it's unlikely to end well for him if the neighbors call the cops and he's standing there yelling like an idiot holding her purse. He's probably leaving the driveway in bracelets. Whereas if he leaves under his own steam and goes and takes a walk and calms down, there's a solid chance that 20 minutes later he can come back and he can have a reasonable conversation. I haven't completely stayed neutral. I mean, like, there may have been an underlying spirit of neutrality, but I have involved myself. And on the surface, it does appear as though I've aligned myself with one party over the other. Okay. Now there's a third type of situation,
Can I
and
comment
this
on
is,
this for a second?
I'm sorry.
Can I make one quick
Oh,
reflection?
absolutely.
My reaction to that, just because I want to go in pace with you, that's all. My reaction to that is if there's no hands thrown, I'm sitting on my trunk.
Fair enough.
It's not mine to be in. And if I get in there and start on him, hey, give her her purse, blah, 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 she may very well say, what the heck are you doing getting involved? And both of them turn on me because I've had it happen before. So I'm sitting on
I've been there
the
too.
well, okay. Are you guys going to keep this up or are we going for coffee? Are we done or no?
No, that's
At that
fair.
point, I leave. But what's the third?
The third would be when there is an actual allegation of abuse. So, and I'm gonna use myself as an example here because I don't want to like I was tempted to use you and your partner as an example, but I mean that's stupid. I'll just put this all on me. So let's say that my wife comes to you and or no, I'm not even going to use you because you're a bit of a different person too. My wife goes to a mutual friend that's not you. See what I did there?
Yep.
And she says, my husband's beating the shit out of me at home.
Mhm.
I fully expect the mutual friend to come to me and at the very least say, "What the hell's going on? We got your wife at our house. She's asked if she can stay with us for the next few nights. We told her yes. Can we come over and chat? Or can I come over and chat?" Now my buddy comes over and he sits down with me and like, "Look, man, I'm not accusing you of anything, but at the same time, it's like I can't stay out of this. Like I don't feel right about staying out of this. I want to err on the side of caution. She says you're hurting her. She's covered in bruises. Like, what do you got to say?" If it was me, I'd be like, you know what? Tell her, call the cops.
Mhm.
And my reason for doing that would be like, if I've got nothing to hide, I don't mind having my feet held to the fire. I really don't.
Yep.
And I don't mind my buddy coming to me and trying to hold me accountable. I don't mind facing difficult questions because I'm a firm believer that the truth is going to come out in the end. And while in this individual situation, maybe it's unfair that I'm being accused when I haven't done anything wrong. There's like 30 other situations that might play out in the realm of my social circle, in the realm of my neighborhood, my city, whatever, where somebody makes an accusation or an allegation of abuse and that person is ignored. I
Mhm.
would rather be falsely accused than have somebody who is definitely guilty get away with something.
Right.
Those of us who are innocent, let's welcome the scrutiny.
Mhm.
It takes away the hiding places for these people that act like shitheads.
Yep.
At least that's my perspective on things. So in a sense, I do think that in some cases, trying to stay neutral actually does empower one side over the other. In most cases, I would side with you, but I would say exceptions apply.
Mhm. And again, this is individuals. Like everybody's going to look at this individually and have a different take on it. If somebody came to me and said, "Hey, my partner's hitting me," whoever it is, whether it's you or somebody else, "My partner's hitting me and I can't put up with it. Can I stay at your place?" My first question is, did you call the cops?
Hmm.
Because in my head, and in 90% of the cases, I will say, if you didn't call the cops, then it's not true. Or, or because there's an alternative, you're expecting something else to come out of this. Because if you're not calling the cops, why are you not reconciling? Or if you're not calling the cops, why are you afraid to call the cops? That's the problem there. That's the discussion that happens there. If you're not calling, if this person's really abusive, why are you not calling the cops? Why are you not in counseling? Of course, you're my friend. I'll let you stay for a night. Absolutely. But I'm not getting in the middle of this conversation, in the middle of this conflict. So you're going to at least, I don't have to let anybody in my house, but you have to let somebody know where you are and that you're safe. I don't care if it's your partner, it might be your mom. I don't care. You call somebody and let them know that you are here and that you are safe.
Fair.
Because I'm also worried about, well, maybe nothing happened. This person's on a spur. They want to cause jealousy between their partner. And now all of a sudden they find out, oh, he was at Jason's house last night. Or what was that all about?
Yeah.
I'm covering my ass because I'm not a person who will hurt somebody. Yeah, that's wrong. I'm not a person who will take advantage of somebody. If somebody deserves an ass whooping, I will try to give it. Sometimes I get my ass whooped, sometimes I win, I'm whatever. But I'm not putting myself into a position where I'm being blamed for somebody because somebody else didn't know. You're calling somebody, you're letting them know you're safe, which is saying that I'm here and nothing, this person is doing nothing to me.
And I guess like based on what you're saying, like it sounds like you would prefer that if it was you who's being accused, you'd prefer that that's how somebody would handle your partner, right?
Call the cops. Absolutely. On your way to your friend's house, you're on the phone. Because if I'm abusing you, I deserve to be there.
Yeah, I wanted to clarify that point. So a lot of times people, I think, like, oh, because I know in the past, like my ex-wife thought, well, Jason like so determined to like not get involved with things is probably because he doesn't want people involved with him. And I always said, well, that's not it at all, because I know that like if I've approached him with something, he'll answer difficult questions. I mean, I've seen you, and like this is for like the audience, for anybody who's listening. Um, I've seen you publicly own up to things that most people wouldn't even admit to themselves in private. It's not that you're afraid of a spotlight being on you. I think you're not a person who's eager to subscribe to unnecessary or unwanted drama.
Mm-hmm. Yep, 100%. Drama does not have a place, and I am so adversely against. Is that correct?
It is now.
Okay. Violence in the home. That I even taught my children. If daddy hits you, who do you call? If Uncle Tony hits you, who do you call? If Grandpa Rolly hits you, who do you call? And every time they say the police, the police, the police. So if somebody's out on the street does something to you, who do you call? If you can call on your dad and your uncle and your grandpa, then nobody can touch you. And that's something I drilled into my kids really, really early
Yeah.
because I didn't want any discrepancy in there. Well, you know what? Sometimes it might be okay. It's never okay.
No, you taught me the same thing with my kids. I did the same thing. The rules apply to everybody, including me.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Because if the person you love the absolute most can't do that to you, why can somebody else?
Right.
Do they give you a candy? No. Because they love you so much, they just have to hit you because you pushed them that far. No, none of that exists. That is in the figmentation and imaginate. That is a figmentation of the abuser's imagination.
Right.
It's an excuse. Don't do it. It's not allowed. You do it, and I'm going to whoop their ass. And I also inform them if somebody does that to you, you remind them who your dad is because I'm pretty well known in this town.
Okay. Well, I don't want to leave things on a violent note, however inspirational that might be. As we come into our final descent here, is there anything else you wanted to cover before we close off?
I like the place I'm in. I like the place we're in. And we didn't get there by cruising through life. We got through there through hard work, determination, and the true love of each other. So allow yourself the opportunity to go in with an open mind. Don't have any expectations and let whatever it's going to be good, bad, or indifferent. You're going to be better for it and you're going to walk away with a clear mind, even if it doesn't work. And who knows, maybe around the corner, your next best friend's right there.
Fair enough. What I'd like to offer in closing is just to somebody posted on Facebook. It was like a relationship life hack, and I thought it was a great one. Instead of feeling hurt, instead of talking about people behind their back, instead of wondering why your partner or your friend isn't giving you what you need, in the moment, in real time, say, I need dot, 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 and tell them. It cuts through so much nonsense. And this is something that you and I have learned and continue to learn to do for each other.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a case of you saying to me, hey, brother, what do you need from me? Or me just volunteering to you, hey, I'm in a place right now and I need this specific thing, or vice versa. We cut through so much nonsense, all this guesswork, the stress, the sometimes too, it's like we want to be there for each other. And it's like, look, I don't have the whole day to dedicate to like fleshing out with you like what actually is bothering you. If you can just get straight to the point, I can get straight to loving you, and then we can both get straight to moving on with our day in a productive way.
Mhm. Yep.
So that's what I'd like to suggest to everybody. It's like instead of assuming that people know how to read your mind, instead of assuming that they know you so well, instead of calling their loyalty, their trust into question, instead of all this unnecessary bullshit pressure, just tell people what the fuck you need. Anyways, on that passionate note, find ways to love each other in the next week, my friends. And until then, wow, you're not taking it this week.
Oh.
Much love.